Yeah, I'm with you. It was funny. I saw Father Chuck and I was talking to him about that, and he asked me the same question. And so I did some heavy research about it. The two biggest things that they fund, because I don't like their support, they give money to Planned Parenthood. The two biggest sources of the Starbucks Foundation of money goes to child literacy and feeding the hungry. And so I don't agree with their political views. If I got to a point where I felt like I needed to pick because they got too radical and they were somebody that I couldn't live with, then I would exit. There's no, I don't, so we're building them, we're growing them. We just signed another 4-unit deal to stop. I'm not required to align myself in any way with them, and I don't. And they know that. So, they're corporate people. When the senior VP that's in charge of all licensing for the whole US is there, we talked about being Catholic. We talked about that's who we are. So I do not support any of their views that they do. And if it got to the point that I had to, I would leave. It's interesting. We had when we founded our ice cream company called Toppers, we had that discussion. Chick-fil-A, I believe Four Rivers barbecue is also closed on Sunday, which I love. It's my favorite barbecue. It's not a commercial for John Rivers, who's a devoutly Christian man. So we had that conversation, and we opted to continue to operate on Sundays. And so because we have people that are willing to do that and are open to doing that. So it was a discussion. We made it a business decision. We thought it was in the best interest of the overall franchise. And when we franchised to others, they would be allowed to make that decision, I suppose. Yeah, we run our business like everybody runs their business. We do, the guy who's my director of operations does prayers. So I think the question was, how do we incorporate our faith into our day-to-day business? So when if we have a manager's meeting, we start off with prayer before, and all of our team knows that we're devout. I can give you story after story. We had one of our ice cream managers over in Cocoa who was having a tough time. I drove over there 2.5 hours. I sat down with her so I could pray with her for 10 minutes. And it ended up being a whole lot longer than that. And then I drove back. So we just, everybody in here has a situation where the Holy Spirit says, I need you to do this or I need you to do that. And it's just listening to that voice and saying, yes, Lord, I will do as you ask. So we have, one of our GMs is an atheist, yet, she names her children after the prophets, Isaiah and Isaac. And so, we're making progress with her. So, and it's just who we are. So we don't have as much turnover as normal businesses have because we run our businesses with Christ as the foundation of our lives. And, as we do that, we find that if we act with humility, then it typically works out. So we don't look at ourselves because we have, cool titles. We don't look at ourselves as, anything big. And we've multiple times done prayers with our teams one-on-one. It doesn't really enter in. There's not a litmus test for do you believe or do you not believe. It's just based on the needs of the business at that time. We don't measure. So it's like if you're Christian, if you're Protestant or Catholic or Buddhist or Hindu or whatever, if you have faith, then we'll hire you. We don't have that qualification requirement. Two elements on that. The first one I talked about really is prayer. So I think in anything we're thinking about, we should be discerning through prayer on, what's next, Lord? Where do you see me? What do you need me to do? The speak, Lord, your servant is listening. And so for us, and it's a great example. I talked about Starbucks. It's a cool thing to have. We had this ice cream brand called Toppers, and we've had it for going on 17 years now, and it has struggled. So, and I'm always, Lord, what do you need me to do? Should we shut it down? What do you need me to do? Where do you need me to go? And I'm telling you, we're a master licensee for Starbucks. We're a sophisticated master licensee. There was a series of progressions, one after the other, where the Holy Spirit was just throwing stuff right in front of me. And we became a sophisticated master licensee for Starbucks. We're one of maybe 10 or 11 in the whole country. We can open any Starbucks anywhere in the country. And so it overwhelmed me. So to me, the message was, and it wasn't me or that I'm anything special, the message was, be open, and God's like, you know what? I hear what you're asking for. There is way more than that. Everybody in this room has had a situation where they've had this wonderful gift, whether it's a health or a healing or business or a child or anything like that. It's because I think prayer is such an integral part of my experience in my life. That's the first step. And so if somebody's thinking about being an entrepreneur, call me. If you're, my old joke is, if you're deciding you want to open a restaurant, I would tell you to go to the bank, take out 50 grand in cash, go home, walk out in the street and burn it. You'll be further ahead. So, but there's, I used to sell franchises for beefs, and that's what I would tell people. And so I think you just have to discern. And I think if you truly are able to listen, everybody in here hears the Holy Spirit in a different way. And so you have to be praying, you have to be asking, and the Holy Spirit is going to tell you what's next. And there are going to be things that are put in your path that are going to be the right things, that says, this is where I want you to be. So that would be my thought, is just really prayerfully discern, and the answer will be made clear. Donna works inside the home. She's our controller. So she was a banker for 20 years and rose the ranks, and she just didn't want to do it. And what's nice is, so we, Friday, she flew up to Chicago, and she flew back Monday night, and she went to our oldest granddaughter's gymnastics event, and she did it because she can. So she's supposed to work part-time for us. She works full-time. She's a brilliant accountant and HR person, and she's the perfect fit for what we have. So she works inside the home, and so that's, it works out nice. Yeah, so the question is from a daily standpoint of daily prayer structure, and how did it kind of go? So when I first started, I'm kind of a nerd. And so I'm looking and finding stuff. So I have the Mother Teresa prayer on humility. There's a little book called The Father's Manual, and I opened that up. And every day I was doing rote prayers. And I was spending, so in a half hour or so of prayer time, I'm talking for the whole half hour. And so that changed. And so I realized, sitting mindfully and listening. So now it's become a little bit of 50-50. I talked about if any one of us spent an hour a day for a month or a year, but if we spent an hour a day and one of us did all the talking, that wouldn't allow for the relationship. It wouldn't allow for that intimate connection. So I do a group of daily stuff. I've got a couple things on my phone. I've got this, and sometimes it just kind of changes up. Some days it's like I don't read anything maybe other than Office, but I really try to spend time listening. So when I'm in adoration, after reconciliation, when I'm in my car, I don't turn my radio on very often, and it's just, I talk to God all day long. If I'm going into a meeting, if I'm going into something like this, if we were going to a lunch meeting, if anything like that, there's always a Hail Mary before I walk in. So it's just a continuous thing throughout the day that it is, it's kind of gotten to. So I started off with the rote stuff because I didn't know what I didn't know, and I'm trying to learn my Catholic faith, and then it turned into that I'm trying to create and continue an intimate relationship, with the Holy Trinity. How do I bring my faith into my business? How do we business decision versus Christian decision? It's always the right thing. I'll give you a great example of that. We own the ice cream company. There was a Twisty Treat in Lakeland on Florida Avenue. It's on North Florida, and a broker calls me and says, "Hey, you guys interested in doing a lease on that?" Like, yeah. To get an existing, we have a couple. We used to own the rights to the Twisty Treat building, so we're like, "Yeah, man, we want that." But I knew the family that owned it, the Scott family, and so I said, why aren't they staying? Well, the lease is up. This is the business. There was a 6-month window, and they missed the window to notify to renew. And so the landlord is holding them up, like doubling their rent for what they were paying because they missed the window. So when they asked me, I said, that doesn't make sense to me. And I'd known Carolyn and Don had since passed. So I drive up there. And she's not there. I left my business card. I said, I really need to talk to Carolyn. Would you please have her call me? And so she called me, and I said, you need to make sure that you make this right. You need to figure out how to get this all taken care of, because this was their legacy. They had been there for 25 years or 20 years. We would have walked in, gotten the building, everything, just by signing a new lease. And so I said, you need to make sure that you're ready for that. So that decision cost us about $125,000 to $150,000 a year, in what that would throw off in cash flow. Is a very successful twisty treat. And it would have been easy to just sign another lease, but I know it's a 10-year lease. I cost our company over $1 million by making the decision to not do that and to do the right thing. And we didn't tell our people, we asked our people, what would you do in this situation? And we had full support of our team doing that. So we try to do what's right over do what's financially best for us. Although I'll tell you, I fight like crazy to make sure that I'm also doing what's financially best. And there's often not a conflict in that. Sure. Yeah, sure. We were actually talking about that. I was talking to Carter about that. Tom Monahan started Legatus, and Don and I owned Domino's from 88 until 96. So we bought 3, we opened another one, and we bought 4 more in Jacksonville. We were up in Gainesville. And so, yeah. And Tom was funny. Tom had a conversion story. So Tom grew up Catholic, and then Tom got into this game of, he bought the Detroit Tigers, he bought Drummond Island, he bought this Bugatti Royale for $6.5 million, highest price at the time paid for a car like that. I was in his office when I was corporate. I ran operations for a part of the U.S. Then I became a franchise. I don't remember when I was in his office, but I was in his office, and I was told it was $1 million just to furnish all the Italian leather that was all over the walls and all that. And then he changed. And he went to an austerity type of a thing. He sold the Tigers. He sold Drummond Island. He got rid of all that stuff. And he said, hey, we need to be mindful, of who we are. He was a devout Catholic in expressing his faith. When we were in Gainesville, we got picketed by the National Organization for Women because of some of the comments that Tom had come out with in the press. We did not change anything that we were doing. They asked me for comments. I'm like, look, we support Tom, and we're a privately owned franchisee. It was like the question with Starbucks. So this was the other side of that. There's this devout Catholic who's practicing his Catholic faith. We supported that. We're business people, and that in that particular situation, it didn't really factor in, so we got picketed. And it's like, okay, do what you feel called to do. So. Sure. I struggled with porn. I've seen statistics. If they say 90% of men struggle with porn, I think depending on the age category, that's probably light. And we were part of a core team at Nativity. And so here's what I'll tell you. So if I pull up pornography on this, I'm walking into my house, I'm walking into my business, I'm bringing pornography in with me. And so, yeah, it was a struggle. And what I learned is addictive behaviors come with there are different things that happen. Trigger, and what's the trigger? So if what each of us have, so if you're struggling with porn, what's the trigger? Is it somebody walks by that maybe was a little bit inappropriately dressed for modesty? What is your trigger? Do you see something on TV? Do you hear something? And then that trigger leads to watching pornography, which sometimes, depending on the circumstance, leads to other things, pleasuring yourself, watching more porn, trying to get somebody else involved in that, sending messages or emails. It's like, hey, look at this. So we just, I just became very intentional in not, in just not going along with that. Because the other thing for me is I was a core team member. So I'm talking to 15, 16-year-old men and women about this thing. And if I don't have a level of purity that I got through reconciliation, how can I talk to them about that? So it just, I kind of don't know how it happened. So I think with addictive behavior, it's kind of always there. So there's always this, I remember that, and every now and then I get, really, really tempted, and I just, Lord, help me out. So, and I've got, and this may sound crazy, I talked about the Lord all day, so I got St. Joseph and Jesus on the left. I had a little custom-made thing here, totus tuus, St. John Paul II's favorite expression, totally yours, to the Blessed Mother. I've got my scapular here. I've got this that my father, Donna's dad, I call him Dad. I was very, very lucky to have two dads. I was probably closer to Donna's dad than I was to my own because we lost him when I was 15. Dad gave me this 30 years ago. He's gone now. I have Sacred Heart socks on. So there's just I mentioned every time I go into something, there's a Hail Mary. It's just, that connection, that constant connection that I'm constantly searching for. I don't want there to be a minute that goes by that there's not this open line with God. And as I continued on my journey, he was able to kind of let me let go of that. Yeah, this may sound funny. I changed friends. We changed friends. Don and I used to hang out with a group. You got a, kind of a real estate guy, a developer who's really successful. We got a senior guy in insurance. We've got a doctor. We've got a guy that owns a car dealership. And that was kind of our group. And we get together and play cards once a month. And our kids all went to the same school together. And honestly, we stopped hanging around with them. And so, and it wasn't that they were bad, because they're all really good people, when you're going out to dinner. But we'd go out to dinner, and it almost was awkward when we, said, hey, let's do prayer. And so we got together with them often, and it just became one of those things. We just kind of went away. And then as we joined core team, we got this whole new group of people. And so we'll have a Gator game. We'll host a Gator game. Go Gators. We'll host a Gator game at our house on a Saturday. And, and it'll be fun, and kids are running around and screaming, and we're yelling and trying not to curse if they fumble, which we're successful most of the time. But then we'll shut the TV down at halftime, and we'll do a rosary together with the families that are there and the kids. And there might be 3 or 4 families, and that's what we do. And so we've got a kind of a close circle of people that we do things with. We feel very blessed to be around them, but we swap friends. Later on, later on, and Father Philip Clement from Nativity, who is just, if you ever met him, he was at, I think he was at Incarnation for a little while. He's a beast. I mean, he's a beast, and in confessional and spiritual direction, and he is very specific, and so he helped, later on, and so, so that was it.
Thank you so much.
Everyone. My pleasure.